we've always approached it was to just talk about it in a natural way, and if something prompts it, then we just use that opportunity to speak about it.
I think it's important that we don't avoid talking about death and sharing about death, especially Jesus' death on the cross, because we know that our children see the reality of death, whether it's someone significant that has died and that they're familiar with, or a pet, a leaf falling to the ground and dying, withering up and dying, a flower that they've picked to present to you, then the next day is all withered and crumpled. An insect, a caterpillar, a bee, whatever it is, they've seen death and they are faced with it on a day-to-day basis.
Last night when I was reading a children's Easter message to the girls about Christ carrying his cross, my 5-year-old daughter paused for a moment after hearing it, and suddenly just out of the blue she says, "That's terrifying." The crucifixion story is terrifying, it's horrific, and it is heartbreaking. No one understands death and suffering more than our Savior.
We have always told the children that when they get sad about the thought of death, that it's a very natural and real feeling, being sad, and that's okay. But then us as Christians have this amazing hope, that we are going to heaven once we die.
And I would say that my children are on the sensitive side, and yet we have, as parents, been very open about discussing death and Jesus' death on the cross with our children, and have had some beautiful discussions with them.
Sean and I had a very quick wake-up call that if we weren't having these intentional conversations with our children about death, somebody else will, whether it's at school, whether it's a child or a friend. They might come home confused or worried or anxious about what the future holds.
We explain to our little girls that this is a broken world that we live in, and suffering, sadness and death was never ever God's original plan. We are so very thankful that God's rescue plan in Jesus, dying on the cross, destroyed and overcame every terrible, scary, awful and sad thing in this life and that this life can offer.
We've often told the children that someone like Amanala will, she's very sick and she's very old and she's not well, she's not in good health. So one day when she goes to heaven, Jesus will make everything new for her, and that will be so amazing. She won't be sick anymore. She'll have a new body. She will run around. Everybody will be happy in heaven. We'll never get hurt again.
Always share things truthfully with your children. Share openly and in an age-appropriate way so that they can understand. Don't be afraid to use concrete words like died or death. Don't say gone to sleep or passed away. Listening to them is actually more important than having all the answers right away. Answer any questions that they might have as calmly and consistently as you can. And be patient. They may need to hear the answers over and over again to process it.
It was just over a year ago when I distinctly remember getting the news that a very close friend of ours had had a heart attack. And I was with our eldest daughter, who was 4 at the time. We prayed together and I included her in that prayer. Unfortunately, an hour later, we got the news that he had passed away. And there was no denying in my posture, in my body, in my face. I couldn't hide from her the sadness and that kind of grief. And so when she saw the look on my face, she needed to already have had an explanation about death in order to cope with that. What a beautiful moment it was that in my moment of grief, my daughter could come to me and say, "Don't worry, he's fine. He's with Jesus." What a beautiful thing to see our children understanding the reality of death, to be able to comfort a mom, that my daughter could do that for me.
And our prayer for them is that they would always know what a friend they have in Jesus, all their sins and griefs today.
A song by Salty, and it's called Jesus, and it just literally goes, the words Jesus, 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 and that he died, and then he rose, and now he lives, and then we live through him. And that's just such a beautiful line even to sing, to as an age-appropriate song, just even to our smallest little ones, because that is the truth of what we believe in, and that we can live through him because of what he's done for us on the cross.
Let them know that death is really hard to understand sometimes, and that they can talk to you at any time. Share your feelings and encourage them to express their own. Be open to all responses that they may show.
I think our children can see genuine belief in us when we teach them, in the way that we respond.
We as parents need to wonder at the resurrection of Jesus, and so let's not leave it at his death, but incredibly encourage our children at the wonder that he rose again and we now live in him.
Friends, this message, this information of death is the most important message that we can give our children, not just because our children might need this message in 10 years' time or 10 days' time, but because it's central to our faith. The death and resurrection of Jesus is what we believe. It's what we place our hope and our trust in. And if we are hoping and trusting for our children to be saved and to turn to Christ, we must teach them about the cross.
Jesus' death, we know, is the most fundamental to our faith. So it's important that we don't gloss over, but that we do speak openly and within a loving relationship to our children about death.
And Derek and I are just so grateful for the gift of life and life eternal through his death and resurrection. And our prayer is that our children would continue to work out their own salvations, and that the peace of God would extinguish all fears that their little minds and hearts might harbor.
It's so important for us to know that this has happened. This is done. This is complete. That when Jesus died on the cross, he said, "It is finished." And so now when we share the story with our children, we get to share in that joy of knowing the end of the story, of already knowing what's going to happen in a few days' time. And so when you do share the story, share that wonder and that joy.
He made the stars to shine. He made the rolling sea. He made the mountains high. And he made me. And the Lord made you. And this is why I love him. For me he bled and died. The Lord of all creation became the crucified.
The death and resurrection of Jesus is what we believe. It's what we place our hope and our trust in. And if we are hoping and trusting for our children to be saved and to turn to Christ, we must teach them about the cross. And it's never too late to start.